Hey guys, what's up? This is Stock Retail coming to you. Kind of a weekend, so it's sort of the end of the week. Tomorrow's Good Friday, so if you don't know, markets are closed for Good Friday in observance of essentially the Easter holidays. If you celebrate Easter, then happy weekend to you, and I hope it's a great one. If you don't celebrate Easter, happy weekend to you, and I hope it's a great one. So it's been a heck of a week. There's been a lot of news this week. Yesterday, actually, I had walked downstairs. I was about to go for a walk, and I looked at my wife and I was like, "Oh boy!" The whole court denial thing that went down had just come out. So I filmed that video and shared with you guys from reading that filing. Speaking of which, the settlement that happened, the kind of picking apart what that sort of AMC dividend was, and then now the court kind of denial of the settlement and the sort of delay until the normal process of hearing. I'm not going to go into too much depth on those because I just did videos on those. So you can go see the other videos from this week on all of that. So generally, I'm more going to talk about what our week was. Actually, here's what I'm going to talk about. First off, it's my point of view. We tend to get distracted when there's good news, and what I mean by that is there are people who actively try to distract us with all kinds of other things. Mario, the Air movie, John Wick, Dungeons and Dragons, all of that. There's some really great news on movies lately, and I want to share that. Even some all-time historic numbers. Really awesome. Forget pre and post COVID. Let's talk about like all time. So I want to share that a little bit and kind of celebrate and make sure we don't get so distracted that we forget to celebrate what we've been fighting for. I'm going to share actually my Q1 earnings forecast. I know the earnings call with AMC isn't until May 5th, but I know people, especially some folks on Twitter who kind of have seen me around for so long, they know that I have a little bit of a background in forecasting. I've shared that on this channel a few times. I shouldn't say a little bit. I have a very deep background in forecasting. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right, but I will share with you just my point of view on what we probably have to look forward to on earnings. And I'll talk about where I could be wrong on that too. I'll share also my Q2 box office forecast and what earnings looks like for Q2. And then what I want to kind of spend some more time on this video that I'll talk about is, we had the settlement. We've had this now kind of denial of the settlement, which is really just almost not a full like shutting down or canceling of the settlement, but a delay. I don't know if you guys can hear my beagle in the background. Hopefully she's not barking too loud. She's downstairs. Sorry, that distracted me a little bit. Oh, I want to talk about what I see coming. So one of the things, and this probably rings true for some of you, I've been around almost this whole journey and have gone through some pretty deep things. There's one video I even did that I kind of told you guys basically some stories from the journey. You can go look at that. There's been times, I don't know why, I've ended up kind of thrust in the middle of some of the biggest things going on and some of the biggest accounts that are out there. It's been a very odd and bizarre experience for a lot of us, I'm sure. Well, I suppose the plus side or the upside of all that is now I have a lot of insight when I start to see things happening, and I can kind of tell what's going to happen before it happens. So I want to just share with you a point of view on some of the things that are coming at us and what I see in terms of influencers and manipulators and negative players and what they're trying to bring into the community, and to just sort of prepare us for that. And then I just kind of want to really end with the next 5 weeks because there's some really great stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about this notion of sort of light versus dark. So let's get right into it. First of all, I just want to continue to encourage us. We saw, like, look at the top right here. This Rotten Tomatoes illustrates it so perfectly. Critics came out, oh man, only 54%. This is not a great movie, whatever. You can see that's 155 reviews. Then there's over 1,000 verified ratings from us saying this is a 96%, almost a perfect score, amazing movie. Then you look on the left here, this is something I track on Twitter. You can track it online too. Basically this thing called Cinema Score where they'll like poll audiences as audiences leave movies. And if this had even scored like a B, and they do the pluses and minuses, so you get like a B, B plus, A minus, A. If this had even scored like a B for Mario, I would have been thrilled. It would tell me, I've watched over time. I mentioned, I do a lot of forecasting. I've watched over time. These scores sometimes can impact a movie's results by quite a bit. And really, they're just sort of like a leading indicator of how audiences are reacting to the movie and will people kind of go back. So an A score on Mario, guys, I'm just telling you, jump for joy. It's awesome. And then here's an account I track on Twitter. I think he's in London. I don't think he's really an ape, but he's just deep, deep into movies. Just a kind of movie buff, and even kind of calls himself a movie nerd or something like that. And he's got often some good insights. So look at what he shared with us. Biggest opening day ever for a video game adaptation ever. So forget pre-COVID, post-COVID, whatever. Mario on a Wednesday, which also, if you don't know, Wednesdays tend to be pretty small for the movies. On a Wednesday, opened up to the biggest video game movie ever in history. And look at how big it was too, because I can tell you right now, Mario was about 32 million. I think it was 31.7. Look at Sonic 2 there. And remember, I maybe shared on some other videos that if you watch franchises, usually franchises grow over time. And that was true for Sonic. Sonic 2 was way bigger than Sonic 1. So even though this was kind of the first Mario movie, I'm not going to count the one from like the 1990s or whatever. Even though this was kind of the first Mario movie, it's already, gosh, way bigger. I don't know what that is. I got to do the quick math, but 25% bigger or something than Sonic's opening day. And Sonic opened up with, when you look at a Friday opening day, that's actually combining Thursday and Friday, kind of the Thursday previews with Friday all day. So Mario beating Sonic is just huge, huge, huge. And you can see this also is the second biggest Wednesday ever for any animation of any kind throughout the history of movies. Just rocking it. And I have no doubt we're going to see just a massive weekend. I'm going to bring my family and get some other family, friends, kind of cousins and aunts and uncles to go with us. So awesome stuff. The reason I said love what you love is like, I don't think we need to get wrapped up in what are other people saying, what are critics saying. We all knew, apes knew, this was going to be an awesome movie. This connects to some of us, our childhood. It connects to our current children. This is just something fun. I think I tweeted once, like, the reason critics don't get it is, look, we want to relive our childhood. We want to share it with our kids, and we want to laugh with Jack Black. I mean, it's that simple. Keep things simple sometimes. Don't worry about the negative critics and the naysayers. So awesome, awesome results on Mario. All right, numbers with retail. So I told you I'd share my Q1 earnings. If you kind of look in the parentheses there on the first bullet, basically my forecast is we had a negative earnings once again of 140 million. But the focus there is that actually puts that as the third best post-COVID quarter yet for AMC. And that's a big, big deal because what you got to understand is Q1 is basically always the worst quarter of the year, or maybe, worst is a negative term, the smallest quarter of the year for movies. So if Q1 this tells you actually kind of the relative growth. If Q1 of a year turns out to be our third best quarter yet post-COVID, imagine what the rest of the year is going to look like. And I've been telling you for months. If you've been on Twitter, I've been telling you for more than a year because I could see these movies coming. That's part of forecasting. You look out at what's coming. And I could also see it's more than that. It's also the fundamentals. There's some places where like rents have gone down or interest payments have gone down as Adam's been paying off debt. There's a lot of things that have been improving, and now we've rolled out popcorn. So just be really excited that though that was our smallest quarter of the year, it's going to be probably, and I always share, if you have a forecast, it's wrong. So please don't, hold me to this and later and say, but retail, you told me. So I'm just guessing with the rest of you, doing my best to forecast. That's why I even give you a range. I say, well, maybe it could be as bad as negative 160 to as good as negative 120. And my forecast is negative 140 million. There's so many things that could make me wrong here. Like if the team made some big investment and, like when you look at, someday I'm going to do a video on how to read a balance sheet and an income statement. So there's something called capital expenditures versus something else called operating expenses. So CapEx versus OpEx. If there was some big investment, say we find out, Adam and team are like opening some new awesome theater or whatever, that would be a big expense that could show up that I didn't know was coming. Only that would actually be strategic and would be very positive, but it would make my number look really wrong. So that's why I'm saying there's a lot I don't know. I'm just using history and the results of the movies and some guesses about popcorn, and I get to this $140 million earnings per share. Not earnings per share, total earnings. Last quarter, I was spot on, like 99.9 something % accurate, but I'm laughing at myself because honestly, there was a lot of dumb luck involved. even I would not expect to repeat that. Like, it's not normal to be that accurate. There were honestly some numbers that I was too high and some numbers I was too low, so they all kind of canceled out, and I had basically a perfect forecast of their earnings. But in the end, that's my forecast. We'll see. The bigger news, though, Q2, the box office. So I'll give you my box office forecast here. Oh, by the way, for Q1, I think the domestic box office was a little over 1.7 billion. It was like 1.718 or something like that. And I had forecast 1.6 billion, by the way. So that kind of tells you I thought we'd hit 1.6. There was about $118 million that we beat on the forecast. Put me at, like, I don't remember, 94% accuracy or something like that. That was awesome. We were beating my forecast by quite a bit, and I loved it. Q2 box office, I'm forecasting, you can kind of see in the parentheses, basically 2.5 billion, but I'm just acknowledging a range again. Like, we could be a little under, we could be a little over that. I would love to see us be over. Let's see Mario beat my forecast. We've got some big movies, Fast X, Little Mermaid. There's a lot of opportunities to beat my forecast. But I'm just telling you, I believe 2.5 billion, that would be the biggest box office of all of post-COVID. So I think Q2 is our biggest box office yet. And so the reasons why, look at this kind of sub-bullet. There's more movies. There's some really big movies. I just listed a couple of those. I didn't even mention Guardians. We've got the popcorn business ramping up. You'll see more doors opening up throughout the quarter, more Walmarts. And, who knows if we get to 7-Elevens by the end of the quarter. I'm not sure. I don't quite remember the timing of that. You'll see the microwave popcorn. That's not even out yet. And by the way, just to kind of head off anybody who wants to kind of, I don't know, come at me on this. There's some folks who like to be negative and, oh, you guys are just, hopium on popcorn. I'm still putting some fairly small numbers in here. So I'm only just mentioning that's a piece of the puzzle. I don't have huge numbers against popcorn. That's going to be easy to beat my numbers, I think. The other thing is Europe's going to be better than last year. So last year there actually were still some kind of Omicron, COVID headwinds. Not to mention last year's Q2, that's when Maverick kind of came out. And if you weren't tracking that real closely, Maverick was really heavily sort of a North American attendance. The attendance on Maverick and the domestic box office on Maverick was a little less overseas. And we don't have movies like that this time. I think we have movies with much more global appeal. So that's going to make that better. Part of my forecast even is, like I said, attendance, because then I've got to figure out like how much concessions is AMC selling. Actually, that's another thing I didn't list. If you've seen Adam's tweets recently, AMC has hit all-time records on spending per person. There was like a whole weekend we hit an all-time record. There was a day we hit an all-time record. And so there's some assumptions I have as well in kind of the patterns of spending when we go to the movies. I know I'm buying popcorn and pop for my family, and it's been a lot of fun, sometimes candy too. The other thing I've mentioned on a few forecast videos in the past, so AMC is opening the Boston ArcLight. I'm not sure. Boston Apes, is that where he's showing, what's he showing with you guys? Maybe that was even Air. Is he in Boston? You know what? I should know this. Shoot, I've just been so busy, I should remember this. I know he's showing a movie in Boston here real soon. I think it was Air. Actually, yeah, that makes sense. Now I'm just almost wondering if I'm behind and he already did that, or if that's this weekend. I think it's this weekend. So sorry, I'm kind of maybe trying to remember that on the fly here. But anyway, I don't know if he's in that Boston ArcLight for this showing. I should double check that. But if you don't know, so AMC is basically opening up another door. And that was a brand new theater that ArcLight had built in 2019 and basically got shut down, because of COVID right away. So it's still basically a brand new theater. Well, that means more volume for AMC, right? More attendance. So I had some math for myself in there of like, what does that add in terms of attendance for the quarter? So there's a lot going on for Q2, but I'll just really focus on the biggest bullet there is from the box office. It's the biggest post-COVID quarter we've ever had. So what does that mean for Q2 earnings? Some of you won't be surprised because I've shared this in other videos, but dun, 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 I am forecasting profits for the quarter. I'm actually forecasting a full-on positive bottom line. There's so many reasons I could be wrong. I keep trying to share that with you guys with humility, and obviously because also I'm going to feel a little bit sheepish if I'm wrong and I've broadcast this, but I'm forecasting profits for the quarter. Obviously, then everything else that follows, you'd have positive EBITDA, that comes before the bottom line, positive cash flows, positive earnings per share. man, I am just looking forward to that day. So if you want to think about that, the quarter ends, as of June 30th. And then just historically, those earnings are released, I think, early August. So perhaps we could be getting some champagne ready for early August, is what I'm saying. Again, don't quote me on that, but that's my point of view. Okay, what's coming at us? This is, I think, the part I want you to really focus in on today. Um, Actually, that's not true. What I really want you to focus in on is what's coming with the movies. I think that's what's important. But I do think, in terms of our culture, our community, staying strong, um, not getting pulled, into distractions. That's what I see a lot from our community. There's people who try to infiltrate and try to influence your sentiment and lead you down other paths and try to cause division and pull us apart, because we're strong. Like, we have been a powerful movement for good and for change, and we're going to continue, and I think we're only getting stronger. But so what do I see coming at us? This is from little things, I don't know, little shoots of weeds coming out of the ground that I'm watching grow, different accounts I see in different places, patterns of scripts, let's say, that I'm seeing, because you'll start to see different negative accounts saying some of the same things, and so it's like they're reading from a script, almost like everybody at the call center got a message, and all the short and distort crowd knew what to say. So what I think is coming at us is, you get a lawsuit, you get a lawsuit, you all get a lawsuit. Watch over the coming days and the coming months how much you're basically recruited to be angry, annoyed, frustrated, and create a lawsuit. And let's all go at Adam. And here's some things I want to just talk through about that, without even yet sharing an opinion. We've talked a lot about chess in this movement, right? Adam's talked about checkmate, so that kind of became a hashtag for us. Well, in chess, you need to think ahead. I have 3 kids. My youngest is 9, and he really likes to play chess with me. He'll try to ask for some free time, and, hey, Dad, can you kind of put AMC away for a while, play some chess with me? Here's the thing I've noticed about him. Now, first of all, my 9-year-old is really smart. He's, when you have 3 kids, you kind of learn to spot things in each kid, their different strengths and, personality traits. This is a heck of a smart kid. The fact that he's playing chess with me as a 9-year-old, I'm pretty impressed with him. The thing is, though, he'll lock in to this idea of what he wants to do. And what I mean by that is, he might look at this chessboard and go, well, if I move this piece here and then this piece there, I can go get, these other pieces of my dad's. And he kind of becomes blinded, because what he just sees is the few things he wants to do, and he kind of forgets to think through, well, in these next 3 moves he's thinking about, I've got several moves that I'm going to come back with. So that's kind of the key, is don't get just blinded with maybe something you think is going to happen. Like, okay, I'll do X and, create some outcome. You also need to think through the fact there are going to be multiple moves, so you got to think multiple steps ahead, and there are going to be counter moves. And what do I mean by that in this case? First off, you know that basically any lawsuit against Adam, against the board, against the company, is going to drain resources, and that's the point. That's why shorts want to just have endless lawsuits. Do yourself a favor, do this community a favor, just Google how do shorts basically attack companies. One of the things you will find, shorts who want to attack a company will leverage endless lawsuits to try to bog the company down in the mud and make sure what they want is Adam distracted with lawsuits. They want the company's money being poured into lawsuits. They don't want AMC able to focus on business results. They want AMC focused on lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. So if you are recruited into, yes, let's raise the pitchforks and have a lawsuit, understand that you will be draining this company's resources and therefore attacking your own stock. That's my strong point of view. I cannot be more clear about that. What's more, I said think several moves ahead. Let's say in your mind you think, well, we'll have this lawsuit and then, I don't know, we'll get what we want with the stock. Okay, that's cool. Or this will end up in courts. with judges who were appointed. Who were they appointed by? I don't know. What's your point of view about who is in the seats of power these days in our country? My point of view is most of the seats of power are connected to Wall Street money. And a lot of judges have been appointed by politicians who are bought by Wall Street money. Who is it we feel like we're fighting right now? So do you want basically a Wall Street appointed court to decide your fate? What's more, even if it was, let's say, a positive judge, do you want your fate decided in court? Because I've seen other so-called squeezes that were decided in court, and they're capped. There's no MOAS. Any of you who want that, go research the history of these kinds of court cases. You completely yield all control over how long you want to hodl. You're just going to be given a price from the courts. So, for so many reasons, shorts want to bog this company down with endless court cases. Courts appointed by Wall Street will decide your fate. Like, there's just so many reasons I've been against this. And the other thing is, I mentioned I've been around for a long time. Check my receipts on Twitter. I keep saying that to some people who come at me on YouTube, like, oh, look at this new YouTuber. No, I've been here the entire journey. You just don't know me yet. And that's fine. I haven't done a lot of YouTubes for a while, or, until recently. And that's just because you can't tweet this level of information. It takes a little longer to get it out. Well, because I've been around, I know about Chad 1.0 and Chad 2.0 and Chad 57.0. Twitter apes will understand that. Maybe YouTube apes will too. There have been so many people who've come trying to be a Pied Piper, rallying the community to them. We have no clue where they came from. They show up on the scene suddenly, and their answer is almost always lawsuit, 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 follow me. And some of them are total grifters too, like give to my GoFundMe and I'll win the day for all of us. Listen, the thesis from day one was not, I can lawsuit better than you. The thesis was, I can hodl longer than you can stay solvent. What do you see happening in the macroeconomy right now? Solvency issues, liquidity crisis, banks melting down, margin calls, extreme measures for people to stay liquid and avoid margin calls. Why? If the thesis is basically playing out exactly as we said it would you abandon that and go, you know what, never mind, forget hodl, forget solvency and liquidity. I'm just going to walk away and hope that, cross my fingers and pray that I get the right judge and, kind of ignore the fact that most of them maybe have been appointed by Wall Street. Think through steps ahead. All right, so consider multiple angles and perspectives. I guess I've really kind of already hammered that one home. The other thing is game things out. Play it out in your mind. What's really going to happen? Who are the lawyers who will get involved? By the way, also, you ever heard of how class action suits actually happen? I once had a paycheck from a class action suit that was like, 9 figures, multi-$100 million settlement. My paycheck was like $2, guys. In a class action suit, the lawyers take a ton of the money off top. Do you want your MOAS money going to lawyers? No. So there's just so many reasons. I don't have to keep hammering that down, but this is what I see coming. You will be invited to rally around lawsuit ideas. I don't want that. I can hodl longer than they can stay solvent. It's just obvious to me. By the way, look me up on Reddit. You can go see that. Or I've done 2 videos recently I'll just draw your attention to, and you can even skip them. Skip, don't watch most of it. Watch just these parts. I'm kind of showing you the slides you would look for. You want to understand the pieces. That's this top kind of picture here. And you want to understand how the end game would play out. I've shown you my point of view on both of those. They really kind of relate to each other. If you understand the pieces that are involved and you understand the end game, there's not a single element of any of this that has anything to do with a lawsuit. It just doesn't. That's never been a part of the thesis. That's never been a part of the calculation of the end game. That's not a part of the pieces right now for how AMC wins. So you want to just think, when I say game it out, you're thinking through. Don't just think defensively. Go on the offense. Think on the offense of how do we win? What is the best path to success and the best path to win against what we believe are evil powers set up against us? I believe that's profits. Like if I just oversimplify it, but I've given you much more insight into that in these other videos. Those are literally, I think, the name of the videos. Look up the pieces, look up the end game, check it out. You can also find a pretty deep dive on Reddit. When I say Reddit, I mean, guys, I did that like a year and a half ago. And everything I wrote in this long Reddit that's kind of all about all of these pieces, I think I even link it in that end game video. You can look in the description of the video, and I think there's a link to the Reddit. You know, a year and a half ago, I predicted all of this stuff that's happening. And that's not a brag, because there were plenty of apes who were even before me who had predicted all this stuff as well. Side note, maybe you saw there was even like a congresswoman recently who kind of said, hey, this is an issue that basically there's people on Reddit and stuff that knew about all these bank meltdowns, you know, long before the regulators even wanted to talk about it. You can look for the receipts. I wrote about it a year and a half ago. We knew. So just kind of, I don't know, educate yourself, do the due diligence, understand what the thesis is, because people will come along trying to draw you into their spider web, and then they bite the little flies. That's what they're wanting to do. These are not people with good morals. They're not people with good ethics. They're just people with greed. Greed will make them do anything, right? So you have to be strong enough, educated enough, and focused enough to stop getting distracted. Due diligence. And you can see the asterisk. So do the due diligence to understand the thesis, but also do due diligence on people. That's how I've never been drawn into all these things. You know, look at my video on tigers and frogs. There were people who were the biggest accounts you could think of, who were holding space calls with hundreds and sometimes thousands of people, who were trying to draw people away. And then it turned out they had gotten in bed with shorts who were trying to undo the whole thing. I knew it. I could see it, because you just pay attention. And, you know, one thing I like to say is consistency over time. If you want to know who I am, I don't even ask that you trust me. On this channel, I say all the time, no, don't trust me, bro. There's no trust me bros here. But watch for consistency over time. You cannot hide what's inside your heart forever. It will come out. There's a wise saying that's out of the mouth, the heart speaks. Eventually, who you are on the inside is going to come out on the outside. You can't hide it forever. So watch people. Watch patterns of behavior, watch what's said, and watch for consistency over time. You're going to find that with me. That's why I have confidence saying to watch that. All right, let's get a lot more positive for a minute. I just want you to turn your eyes to what's on the next 5 weeks. Just the next 5 weeks. Now, I'm not even, before we look at all of this, I'm not talking about the Air movie, the Mario movie. John Wick is still rolling. Dungeons and Dragons is still rolling. Scream 6. There's a movie out, you know, for Easter, it looks like, His Only Son. That one caught me by surprise. I hadn't seen that coming, and that's been doing some fairly big numbers. There's an anime movie coming out that wasn't in my forecast. You know, I've shared before, I have a bucket for just lots of movies that I didn't forecast. So generally that number is forecast. It's not what I call incremental. But some of this is incremental. We're already maybe looking like we could beat the forecast. Without even naming those movies on this page, look at just the next 5 weeks. We've got... obviously the big ones, Guardians and Fast X, are kind of coming out here. But we've got Mafia Mama. That looks pretty funny to me, honestly. And that's another thing I've shared with you guys. As the movie industry gets more healthy, we're getting more and more, you know, some people call it counter-programming. I would just call it variety and, you know, more voices and more storytellers being heard. And man, I'm excited about that, because I love all these comic book movies and action movies. I really do. I go to all of them. But I'm also, you know, someone who loves storytelling. And so when you get more variety, like Mafia Mama, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. You know, Renfield is looking kind of interesting. That's the Nick Cage movie, you know, about him being kind of a vampire and basically a guy working for him. There's the Evil Dead movie coming. Don't sleep on this movie, The Covenant. Go check the industry forecasts for that. They're not small. And Big George Foreman, I know Adam's doing a showing of that. Maybe that's the Vegas showing. I don't quite remember. So if you guys are going to that, enjoy. Love that. There's a lot coming, and there's more that I didn't even show here. So if you think about all the movies that are out now, because it's not like Mario's going to suddenly disappear, and then these movies coming, as these next 5 weeks happen, and as there's all this talk about lawsuits and talk about, you know, settlements and the split and is it happening and is it not happening, you can see how you could spin yourself sideways. But come back to the thesis. What's the thesis? I can hold longer than you can stay solvent. Well, guess what happens to AMC as these amazing results start rolling out? It's going to be good, right? That's only good for our stock. That has nothing to do with all this other stuff, whether we split, whether we don't, whether there's a lawsuit, whether there's not. The movie industry is our stock. Our stock is not splits and lawsuits. Our stock is the movie industry. Focus on that. And we are about to have the best quarter we've ever had post-COVID, and it's going to be really basically tracking at pre-COVID levels. We're getting close. So, last thoughts. I just kind of want to share this idea of it's something I've said for a long time on Twitter. Uh, let's say you walk into a dark room and it's pitch black, and you hate the fact that it's dark in there and you can't see anything. You can't even see your own hand. And you could scream at the darkness because you hate it. And you could point it out and you could make sure everyone knows about the darkness and scream at it and highlight the fact that it's dark, and not a darn thing changes. You can scream at the dark, or you can flip on a light switch. Which one of those changed the room? And I believe that strongly. You're getting, I said out of the mouth the heart speaks. You're getting a piece of my heart. Look, there's such a thing as righteous anger. There is. We should be angry at fraud and corruption and manipulation and people who are taking food off of tables. That's not okay. And we should stand up to that, and we should be angry about that. I understand that. But that has nothing to do with ripping each other apart on social media. That has nothing to do with identifying who all the trolls are and fighting them. There's a time for that. Don't get me wrong. It's good. But what's far more effective is shining a light. What are you actually doing to make the world a better place? What are you doing? Whether that's just in AMC, we can be celebrating what's good, what's happening, popcorn rolling out, movies rolling out, a lot of good things, our community itself, supporting each other, lifting each other up. We have the chance to do something different here, guys. The hashtag apes together strong can mean something. But there are people who don't want it to mean something. They want you divided. They want you angry. Because then your brain doesn't work right. I'm serious. I took a class, neuropsychology in my undergrad, or neuroscience, sorry. I guess I'm telling you, my undergrad was in psychology, and so I took some basically studies of the brain classes. Cognition was one, neuroscience was another one. Chemically, actually, literally, physically and chemically, your brain doesn't function the same when you're angry. You don't get to these higher levels of thought. Study it. Check it out. So there's a time for being angry. I understand that. We should fight against the darkness. We should. We should never quit. Okay? But I believe the most effective way to overcome darkness is with light. Shine your light. I've told a story in some places, and maybe I'll tell that again sometime. One of the biggest things someone ever did for me in my life. They simply bought me a pair of pajamas. I was little, and I still remember it. It impacted my life, and actually, I could tell you a whole story about how that turned into me being a generous person helping others. You can do small things for people. Who needs clothes? Who needs food? Who needs rides somewhere? Who just needs some gas for their car? Who needs help with their rent money? Who just needs a pat on the back, some encouragement, some kind words? Make this world what you want it to be. And I'm telling you right now, the shorts, their entire mission is to create negativity. They are sentiment influencers. They want negative sentiment. And the way you win is through positivity, kindness, and encouragement, and lifting others. I promise you, you can do it. If you'll focus on what matters. Let's go.